On the phone right now, Martha reports that White House staffers were all called in this evening in jubilation in Washington.
We're hearing this absolute jubilation throughout government. But for the last few days, George, they've been meeting in the Situation Room. I was told several days ago there were high-level meetings going on in the Situation Room. Other people in the White House couldn't even get near it, and that there were special operations forces in there. There was a high military presence in there, and of course CIA as well, because it is the CIA that has been tracking him largely in Pakistan, not usually the military there.
And thank you, Martha. And of course, Osama bin Laden, the most wanted man in the world. The United States has been offering $25 million for his capture. That was because of his involvement, of course, in the 9/11 attacks. And we have him here claiming responsibility for those attacks.
We calculated the number of casualties from the enemy who would be killed based on the position of the tower. We calculated that the floors that would be hit would be 3 or 4 floors. I was the most optimistic of them all. Due to my experience in this field, I was thinking that the fire from the gas in the plane would melt the iron structure of the building and collapse the area where the plane hit and all the floors above it only. This is all that we had hoped for. Allah be praised. The difference between the first and the second plane hitting the towers was 20 minutes. And the difference between the first plane and the plane that hit the Pentagon was 1 hour. The Americans were terrified, thinking there was a coup.
Bin Laden claiming credit for the 9/11 attacks. We're standing by waiting for President Obama to make a statement at the White House. And as you pointed out, Brian Ross, ever since 9/11, ever since the United States lost Osama bin Laden's trail in Tora Bora, there have been several attempts to get him, but no firm fix on where he was until this week.
Not for a long time. People who joined the Obama administration were stunned to learn there really was no solid sighting of him, no solid evidence. They stepped up the efforts in those mountains. They continued to believe that, in fact, he was in the mountain range between Pakistan and Afghanistan, successfully eluding every effort by the U.S. to track him down. He and his number 2 man, Ayman al-Zawahiri, had split up. They were in different areas. Zawahiri now inherits the role as the leader of al-Qaeda, which, of course, was founded really by bin Laden with the millions of dollars that he inherited from his family wealth.
And we're joined also by Pierre Thompson. Pierre, at various times there were reports that he had left that area, that he may have gone to Somalia, that he may have been even living in a major city inside Pakistan. But the reports now, of course, that he has been killed in northwest Pakistan, in that remote region.
George, we have multiple sources saying that he has in fact been killed. This was extremely close hold. They wanted the President of the United States to make this statement. I can tell you, echoing what Martha has said, that there's jubilation in government. Officials are very excited about this, that this was a significant strike. And I'm being told it was not a law enforcement strike, but it was a military or intelligence strike.
Okay, Pierre, thanks. Thanks very much. I'm joined here also by David Muir. And David, since 9/11, the survivors of 9/11 and the families of those who were killed on 9/11 had waited for this day, the day that Osama bin Laden, the man responsible, the man who ordered the attacks, would be killed.
Tonight they're going to think justice served, George. As you know, more than 2,900 people were killed on 9/11 in those attacks here in New York when those Trade Center towers collapsed. That strike on the Pentagon, of course, in Pennsylvania as well. Every year they mark this anniversary. This would have been 10 years since the 9/11 attacks come this September. And so tonight, with this headline across the bottom of your screen that Osama bin Laden has been killed, they're going to look at this as justice finally served for a man who caused such sadness and such terror here in the United States, George.
And Brian Ross, ever since President Obama came in, these
Look at
drone
that asshole.
in northwest Pakistan, across this mountainous region, have been stepped up considerably.
Absolutely. It was a major tenet of his policy in going after al-Qaeda. That was a goal they hoped they could accomplish. During the Bush administration, at one point, the drone efforts and the Special Forces effort had been removed from Afghanistan and shifted to Iraq. President Obama undid that, shifted the forces back into Afghanistan.
Okay, I want to bring Jake Tapper back in from the White House right now. What do you have, Jay?
Well, it's just, I was thinking, having covered this for almost a decade, there's been a real debate within this White House, the previous White House, and the intelligence and military communities as to how much emphasis should be given to Osama bin Laden, given the fact that he has been cut off so much from the operational terrorists who are part of his organization. And also, there was a time, you might remember, when George W. Bush, President Bush, talked about getting him dead or alive, and then the Bush administration backed off that, talking about how this was not just about one man, this was about an organization, an existential threat. And that's really been the way that the Obama administration, President Obama, has addressed this as well, looking at Al-Qaeda as an organization and not necessarily focused just on getting Osama bin Laden or his number two, Ayman al-Zawahiri, talking about the threat more in general in Yemen, through Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and of course throughout the world. So it will be interesting to see just how much emphasis President Obama gives to this action, with sources telling us that the U.S. has killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan.
And that's exactly right. And Brian, there was some question in recent years over how much communication he had with the rest of Al-Qaeda, whether he was able to issue any orders of any kind at all.
Very little communication. They had begun to track the couriers that brought the tapes out that he was making to Al Jazeera and to the internet, and they tracked them back, and they were getting close at one point, so he cut off almost all communications. And they felt they had isolated him, and as a functional matter, he wasn't really able to lead Al-Qaeda anymore, except on the broadest sort of principles.
Okay, I want to go to Nick Schiffer now. He's in Islamabad, Pakistan. Nick, what's the reaction there?
Well, George, there's no reaction yet, at least not immediately, but I think one major point is that the CIA has been hunting bin Laden and senior Taliban and Al-Qaeda leaders throughout northwest Pakistan. There will be a big question as to who helped provide this intelligence. The CIA called these drone strikes, quote, the only game in town. That's because the Pakistani army isn't going into these areas. The U.S. military can't operate in these areas inside Pakistan along the border. The Pakistani government, though, decries the drone strikes, and they have objected very loudly about them. But if they help provide this intelligence, it means that the Pakistani government has assisted in this strike, something that the U.S. has asked for more help from the Pakistani government, both to provide intelligence for this and permission for these drone strikes to actually attack targets within Pakistan.
And Nick, you're right, there has been some real friction between the United States and Pakistan over this, and some real opposition in the Pakistani public especially. Can you speculate at all on what the reaction of the Pakistani public might be now that Osama bin Laden has indeed been killed? Of course, the news is not widespread over there yet, but what's your best guess?
Well, George, as you know, the U.S. is very unpopular, both in Pakistan and parts of Afghanistan, right across the